We're joined now by Bains, the Minister of Innovation, Science and Development. And Minister, we're asking Canadian companies to repurpose. And the Prime Minister said today, not only are they doing it, but they're finding ways to innovate. Just how quickly can we get manufacturing processes turned around? 30,000 ventilators is a big number.
Yeah, this is Canadian innovation at its best, as the Prime Minister mentioned. Many companies have stepped up. We've seen close to 5,000 different submissions and ideas come forward to help build essential equipment and supplies. And with respect to the announcement today with regards to ventilators, we will see the production capacity build up in a matter of weeks. So we anticipate these ventilators being built by these companies in May.
So just in terms of the ability of these businesses, is there government assistance? In other words, how quickly can you get a purchase order in? How quickly can you get money flowing to these businesses so that they can, because they're not doing their regular businesses, support themselves and their employees while they pivot in this way?
So we're trying to act fast, not slow. We're trying to be nimble. And we recognize that we need to assess these ideas, make sure that they meet the regulatory requirements from Health Canada. Then we get a letter of intent so they can start the financing and the retooling, and then we have a purchase order in place. And what the Prime Minister announced for the 30,000 ventilators, all those steps have been taken. We've engaged with CAE, for example, Starfish Medical, or Ventilators for Canadians, and they've gone through all those steps, and there's a purchase order in place now where we want to see production take place immediately. And so we're acting in days, and production will occur in weeks.
We have seen business response to some of the other measures the government's put in place. The wage subsidy in particular, many have said it's moving too slowly for them. And I know that for government, it's moving at the speed of light because these are big, complicated programs. But how do we get the money out the door to ensure that people aren't laid off if they don't really necessarily have to be?
Yeah, the underlying principle is we want to do more, not less. And we recognize if we want to flatten the curve, if we want to save Canadian lives, there's going to be significant economic fallout. And in order to deal with that, we need to provide immediate cash support for individuals and businesses as well. And the wage subsidy is a key initiative, is a key component of supporting Canadian businesses and keeping people employed. We're making adjustments. We're hearing feedback from businesses, for example, startups or companies that are scaling up that felt that the revenue threshold did not apply to them. We're going to make adjustments to make sure that we address those concerns.
We've seen this massive number, almost 800,000 Canadians applying yesterday alone for the CERB. We expect, obviously, since that's only a quarter of the Canadians who might apply based on their birth date, we're definitely expecting a massive number here. How far is the government willing to go in terms of the ability to help support people if this should go on weeks and weeks or even into months, Minister?
If you look at other jurisdictions, they are deploying billions, if not trillions of dollars into their economy, and they are going up to 10 to 15% of their GDP to deal with this crisis. The direct investments that we have put forward represent 5% of GDP, and we know these are important measures to not only support Canadians now, but ultimately to help the economic recovery. It's difficult to say precisely if this will take weeks or months, but we know that we need to be flexible, that we need to be agile, and we need to demonstrate to Canadians that they must stay home. If they stay home, maintain physical distancing, social distancing, this will save Canadian lives. And we know there's an economic cost to that, and we're willing to bear that cost to save Canadian lives.
How far can we go, though? Just there is a limit, one imagines, or maybe there isn't. When you have the conversations inside government, I mean, how far do we go before we're at a place where the cost, the ultimate cost, will just be too much?
Look, I mean, the number one priority is the health and well-being of Canadians, but there's also an economic well-being component that you're alluding to, and also just the fact that there are some limitations with how much money we can spend. But because we had such a strong balance sheet, the best amongst the G7, we've got the fiscal firepower to make these investments. And it's the prudent thing to do as well, because it's not only important to help Canadians in the short term, but it enables us to get through the crisis and have a quick rebound as well. And this is consistent with other jurisdictions, other G7 countries as well, that are using their fiscal capacity to provide short-term support, but also assist us with the stimulus that we need as we navigate through and get to the recovery phase.
And I mean, of course, the emphasis now is on getting through this and on the emergency needs that we need immediately. But when we think longer term, are we beginning to have those conversations inside government? Are there teams that are looking at the aftermath of this so that we can kind of better prepare and plan the programs we put in place now that won't leave quite as big a footprint?
Yeah, there are teams in place, conversations taking place. There's policies and strategies that are being developed to say, how can we come out of this to make sure that Canadian companies are more competitive, to make sure that Canadians are better off? How do we reposition ourselves and differentiate ourselves with other jurisdictions? How do we support key sectors across the economy? These are conversations that are taking place in parallel with the support that we're providing Canadians, the income support, and also making sure that we work with the provinces and territories to protect frontline healthcare workers.
We've been having this conversation about medical supplies. We're now asking Canadian companies to manufacture them. Are we in a new period, do you think, Minister, that runs counter to the thinking of our exporting nation, where we will look at essential goods that we need to know we can manufacture here because we don't always trust our trading partners?
That's a great question. Those global supply chains are put into question now. There's a lot of strain. There's a lot of unpredictability around those supply chains. So we're looking at made in Canada solutions. So when it comes to essential supplies, we need to reevaluate how we build these pieces of equipment for Canadians. And that's why, for example, today when we announced ventilators, the key aspect of those 30,000 ventilators that we're going to build in Canada are also going to be, to the vast majority of the supplies, be sourced within Canada. And one other innovative solution that we highlighted today was raw material for gowns, using car airbags or construction house wrap as raw material to build medical grade gowns. And that's, again, designed with the sole intent to source them from Canadian companies, so we don't need to rely on our international supply chains. So there's some thinking going on around in the short term as we deal with this crisis. And I suspect that we're going to have to rethink some of the business models and approaches we have in terms of how can we build essential supplies within Canada if we face a similar crisis in the near future.
All right. It's great to have you with us today, sir. Really appreciate it.
Thanks very much for having me on.